lot of people think it's okay to wait 100,000 miles before starting any preventative maintenance on a vehicle, including a tune-up. However, some of the benefits to doing the job sooner are smoother running in the engine, less misfires, lower emissions, and certainly what's on our minds these days, better fuel economy. The vehicle we're going to work on today is a 2005 Chevy Cobalt with a 2.2-liter Ecotec engine. At first glance, you might think it's difficult to do the job because of the engine covers that are in the way. Once you remove them, you'll find it's very easy. The first thing I like to look at is to see if there's any bolts holding the engine cover down. You certainly don't want to break it and then make the job feel bad. I don't see any bolts on this one, so I'm going to take the oil cap off and gently pry. Not too bad. The plugs are actually underneath this integrated coil module assembly. And to get to it, looks like we're going to have to take off a couple bolts. So let's go grab some tools and see what we need. Okay, I'm going to grab a 3/8 ratchet, extension, and a 10mm socket. Once I have the ratchet, once they're loose, I can simply use this handle as a spinner. Another nice thing about using a long extension, I can get some leverage and use both my hands. Loosen up the bolts and get the cover assembly off. And you'll notice I put the oil cap back on. I didn't want anything to ruin my day. Dropping a bolt in there wouldn't have been fun. Now the only thing I'll have to do is to unplug the actual coil module assembly. There's a little lock here. I'll pull back on the lock and push down on this tab. It's kind of tough. Take my glove off. And after a little bit of fighting, there we go. Be careful, this is expensive. Here it is. Have your coil on plug boots, individual coils inside an assembly, and ignition module on this side, and we're going to start looking at the plugs. Normally the next step would be, before breaking the plugs out, would be to take compressed air and spray down into the plug wells. However, since these wells are vertical, I'm a little bit nervous about doing that, so I'm going to put this down to actually take a look in the holes. You'll notice on this overhead cam engine, and like most overhead cam engines, the spark plug is actually well down into a recess hole. Okay? You're going to need to get an extension and the proper size spark plug socket in there in order to get the plug out. I grabbed one of the new plugs out of the package to figure out what size spark plug socket I need. They usually come in a couple different sizes, 13/16 or 5/8. Some of the small engines use 3/4 inch, but this one we need a 5/8 inch plug socket. This one has rubber inside of it that'll also help hold the plug as we try to take it out of the well. Additionally, I'm going to use my same old ratchet and extension from last time, and I grabbed a piece of rubber hose. The rubber hose will help me start the plug and also help me remove the plug from the hole. I'm going to put my 5/8 inch socket on my extension and stick the extension in the hole by hand. This way I can make sure it's positioned over the plug hex correctly and I can break it loose. Now I put the ratchet on and I start to break the plug loose. I hear it squeaking a little bit, but it's dry, but it's not stripped. It's coming out okay. I spun the plug loose a couple turns, do it by hand. I can take it off, and now go to my rubber hose and slide it over the end of the plug. And it's out. When you change your spark plugs, you should upgrade to a premium brand, such as Autolite XP. A few extra bucks is worth it. You'll get additional life, better performance, and certainly better fuel economy. Before installing my Autolite XP plugs, I want to make sure the gap is set correctly. I just got off Autolite.com and found out the 2005 Cobalt here needs a 40 thousandths gap. So I'm going to use a round wire gauge and check that gap. This one's a little bit loose. It's okay to tap the plug gently on a surface to tighten it up. That's about perfect. This one also. This one's right on the money. This one's a little bit tight. I'm going to use the gap opener to open the gap just a little bit. Put pressure on the side wire this way. And you never want to put pressure in between the center wire and the side wire. You can break the platinum ball off the center wire. We're done gapping, so we're going to put it back together. Before I do that, I'm going to replace the boots. It's a good idea to replace the boots when you have the ignition system apart. It certainly keeps moisture from getting up in there and shorting out the coil pack assembly. Alright, to do it, slide the suppressor spring inside the boot, stick it on the end of the coil, and push down, and you'll hear it pop. Done. The reason why you want to change the boots is over time the boots will deteriorate, crack, and allow moisture to enter the plug. If it gets up the suppressor spring, you'll get inside the coil and short it out, and that will cause a misfire and component failure. After this, we want to put just a little bit of dielectric grease in each boot end. Not too much, just a dab will do you. And we can proceed to reassemble the coil assembly onto the engine. Now it's time to reinstall our plugs. I'm going to use our piece of hose that we used to spun it off earlier, put on a new plug, and get her centered over the hole. The goal here is to start this and make sure it goes in easily. If you have any resistance, it doesn't go in nice and easy, you could potentially strip it. So make sure it's going in easily with your fingers and that you can spin it all the way through. It's got a lot of threads on here, so it's going to take several turns to get this to seat. Right. Once it's hand tight, take your rubber hose off. Put your ratchet on it and tighten it no more than about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of a turn. Alright, now it's time to put everything back together. I'm going to take the coil assembly, flip it over, get it over the spark plugs, push it down firmly, grab my bolt that I had up here, and start threading in. Well, we're all done. Got the coil assembly back on, bolts tight, got a plug back in. Before I put the engine cover back on, I'm going to fire it up and make sure she's running on all 4 cylinders, nice and smooth, and I don't have any funny noises. Okay, looks like she's running smooth, no problems. We shut her off, put the engine cover back on, and call it a day. Alright, put the engine cover back on. Make sure I put the oil cap back on. Shut the hood. She's back on the road. Make sure you check Autolite.com for other tech tips and information on spark plugs. I'm Dave Buckshaw, Technical Trainer. Hope to see you soon.